In the world of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, it seems like everything is centered around candy. The entire world goes nuts trying to find one of the 5 golden tickets to go see the inside of the legendary Chocolate Factory. But the main question is, in a world of selfishness, greed, and gluttony, who wanted the golden ticket and the prize of a lifetime supply of chocolate for selfish reasons, and who had a heart of gold?
Welcome, my friends. Welcome to my chocolate factory.
Today, we're digging into the morality of the characters from the classic movie to see who's pure and good and who's, well, evil and selfish. This is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Good to Evil.
Candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker.
As usual, we'll be starting with the most pure and working our way down. These characters are the good. Now, full disclosure, the good list is surprisingly short for this family movie. The first and only person who we think is eligible for the gold medal of good is Charlie Bucket. Charlie works as a paper delivery boy to help provide for his widowed mother and grandparents.
Here's what's left. You keep it.
He never complains and always tries to find the best in any situation. He hangs on to hope despite how rough his life is, even continuing to look for the final golden ticket when there's only one left. He's the only kid on the tour who's kind-hearted and actually listens to what Wonka tells him, except for the problem with the fizzy lifting drink.
Hey, Grandpa, I can't get down!
But in reality, who can blame a kid for sneaking a taste? And he makes up for it later by apologizing and returning the everlasting gobstopper that he took. This is really what shows Charlie as the honest boy that he is. He's promised a huge sum of money in return for the gobstopper by Slumworth.
Your reward will be 10,000 of these.
As much as that money would help him, he has the integrity to turn the opportunity down, even after Willy Wonka blew up and yelled at him and his Grandpa Joe.
So you get nothing! You lose!
In all seriousness, I think most people in his situation would have taken the gobstopper, flipped Wonka the bird on the way out, and tried to sell that thing immediately. Charlie has a heart of gold and cares about everyone in his life and would do anything for his family, which he eventually can do after he wins the prize of taking control of Wonka's factory. Now, the silver medal for good goes to Charlie's mother, Mrs. Bucket. Mrs. Bucket is a widow who takes care of her son, parents, and in-laws.
It takes a lot of work to keep this family going.
She works hard and is clearly the one supporting the family. She expresses how she knows that Charlie deserves more and does what she can to stay positive for her son. She is clearly responsible for raising Charlie to be such a good kid. Our good section is pretty short, and this is the last entry. We're giving the bronze medal of good to Charlie's teacher, Mr. Turkentine.
Well, I can't figure out just 2, so let's pretend you opened 200.
He isn't the most important character in the movie, but honestly, he seems like a pretty rad teacher. He's definitely a bit of a goofball, willing to dismiss class so he can go buy candy bars, but all in all, his science class looks pretty cool.
Class dismissed.
And that completes our good section. With that said, we now move into neutral territory. This is the gray area. And this time, there's only one character who we've ranked in this section. Honestly, we struggled to rank this guy, but we finally decided that this next spot is perfect for Arthur Slugworth or Mr. Wilkinson. Mainly because this guy's motivation is very much a mystery. Now, he does have a creepy way that he whispers to kids and corners Charlie to ask him to steal from Willy Wonka for him.
Now listen carefully because I'm going to make you very rich indeed.
But I don't hold this second part against him entirely because one could argue that the motive of passing the factory onto someone else isn't inherently bad. We find out later that he's just an employee that was used for a moral test to see who would steal and who wouldn't. Now, as you can tell by this being the end of our very short gray area, Willy Wonka is not a good guy. Sorry. So, if Slugworth is working for him, then he must know about much of the depraved stuff going on inside the factory. With how little Willy Wonka seems to care about the Oompa Loompas and the kids inside the factory, it might be possible that he knew more about how unsafe that factory was going to be. And maybe that's why he chose to help Wonka find a replacement, so that this lunatic could retire and stop endangering people.
He can't swim.
There's no better time to learn.
But on the flip side, maybe he doesn't care and is completely okay with how Wonka runs the place. The reality is, this guy's morality is tough to figure out, and for that reason, we're keeping him in the gray area. And that brings our very short neutral section to a close. Now, we're on to the dark side. These characters are the bad and the evil. Okay, real quick, let's kick off the bad section with this big mouth lady. She's the one who immediately shouts to everyone in the area to tell them that Charlie found what is essentially the most valuable item on the face of the earth.
The kids found the last golden ticket!
Like, was that really necessary? An angry mob could have beaten the poor kid to death over that thing for all she knew. So yeah, totally make sure to scream and alert everyone to the fact that a defenseless child found the last golden ticket. Heck, go ahead and grab his arm and drag him over into the mob. Did you really have to make this about you, Karen? Anyway, moving on, let's get to the kids. We've got some bad apples, but the reality is the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. These little jerks are really just the product of poor parenting, so we do give them a bit of the benefit of the doubt. They're just kids after all, rotten kids, but still kids. Augustus Gloop is first. Augustus is the first kid we're listing in the bad section because he doesn't really do anything too bad. He's just really selfish, gluttonous, and greedy.
It's gonna cost a fortune in fudge.
He doesn't share with anyone and eats a ridiculously large amount of candy and chocolate. He ignores the rules about staying away from the chocolate river, and because of his negligence of the rules, he's sucked in and taken away. Honestly, if your hobby is eating, you should find another hobby, perhaps running. Moving on to the second little monster, we have Violet Beauregard. Violet is openly rude to pretty much everyone, including her own father.
Dad, for heaven's sake, this is my show!
She has confidence, which would be fine, but in her case, she has a severely inflated ego. She has way too much pride in her gum chewing skills and refuses to think that she could be anything but number one.
Now this piece of gum here is one that I've been chewing on for 3 months solid.
Like the other kids before her, Violet doesn't listen to Willy Wonka and turns into a giant blueberry because of her actions. Next up is Mike TV. Mike has a bigger mouth than Augustus, which puts him lower on the list.
Can't you shut up? I'm busy.
He focuses too much on TV, which in and of itself isn't what puts him on the bad list, although it does speak poorly about his parents. Mike is rude, obnoxious, and ignores his parents, his school, and Wonka, and he's really annoying. He neglects to learn anything new and ends up ignoring Willy Wonka about not messing with the TV room and ends up being shrunk because of it. And did I mention this kid is also really annoying?
You should open your mouth a little wider when you speak.
Okay, let's talk about Mr. Beauregard next. His fault in parenting is that he eggs his egotistical daughter on. He constantly brags about how great she is, which just proves how she's almost just as spoiled as Veruca. Even when she's breaking the rules that Willy Wonka tells her not to break, Mr. Beauregard praises her for being the only person brave enough to do it.
Violet, you're turning violet, Violet!
Here's the reason why I cut him a bit of slack. Unlike Veruca, Violet seems to take pride in her goofy accomplishments, such as gum chewing. He encourages her to feel proud about it, even if it inflates her ego, which is understandable as a parent. But he's not as spineless as Veruca Salt's father with spoiling his kid. That said, do you really have to use the opportunity to plug your car dealership, dude? Moving on to the Candyman. Now you might be asking, how is this guy who sells candy and sings about candy in the bad category? Well, here's the thing. I take some issues with this guy. Some I think are fair all around, others maybe not, but let's break it down. To start, the thing that I think we can all agree on, this guy distributes candy in a very unfair way. Like, during his musical number, he's giving away free candy like they're $19.99 AOL installation CDs. But then he charges Charlie, the poorest kid in town, for a candy bar. Now, I'm not against capitalism or anything, but this guy definitely has a weird priority with giving his candy away for free. It's also worth noting that he almost KOs this kid with the counter door and does not give an F. And that's the first half of my criticism. But then there's the speculative stuff. Like, do I have to be the one to point out how creepy this dude is?
You look like you were born to be a Wonka.
I know this was a different time, and it's meant to be innocent and all that, but if you were singing and giving away free candy to children and picking them up, hugging them and stuff today, you know, FBI, open up. I'm not saying he's doing anything monstrous necessarily, it's more of an optics thing, but his behavior is just weird. Definitely a weirdo. Moving on to our second crappy parent, we have Mrs. Gloop. She continues to let her child rage on his path of gluttony, which not only turns him into a selfish person, but can lead him down a really unhealthy path. As a parent, you should be instilling at least some healthy eating habits, otherwise you're doing a great disservice to your kid. She's not as bad as some of the other parents, but get your stuff together, Mrs. Gloop.
Save some room for later, Augustus Liebling.
Okay, Grandpa Joe, finally, you're up. While he seems like a nice guy at first and just a sweet old man, we see the first sign that he's hiding stuff as soon as he realizes that Charlie can go see the chocolate factory and could win a prize. He jumps back on his feet after 20 years of not being able to walk, which we find a bit suspicious.
As soon as I get my strength back, I'm gonna get out of this bed and help him.
To say the least. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but this is just not possible, right? And look, I understand Charlie taking a swig of the fizzy lifting drink. He's a kid. Kids do stuff like that. But Grandpa Joe is an old man. And it's not even really about the stealing.
Let's take a drink, Charlie. Nobody's watching.
He, A, knows that Charlie could get booted from the tour by breaking the rules and still tells him to break the rules. But more importantly, B, he just saw Violet and the fat German kid potentially die from drowning/furnace and blueberry transformation. Not to mention all the other wacky, dangerous stuff around the factory. And he's still like, yeah, grandson, go ahead and take a drink of this unfinished beverage made by a lunatic who just told us it's not safe nor done yet. Grandpa Joe is a dumbass. Then, when Wonka yells at Charlie, which we admit is unnecessary, Grandpa Joe plays victim.
You're an inhuman monster!
I said good day!
I mean, you did sign the contract, guy, and you intentionally broke a rule. It really is your fault. He isn't capable of taking any responsibility for his actions. On top of that, after he got yelled at by Wonka, he tells Charlie that they're gonna go give the gobstopper to Slugworth out of spite. Or maybe that was his plan the whole time. Who knows?
Slugworth wants a gobstopper, he'll get one.
In many ways, Grandpa Joe is responsible for the only moral hiccup that Charlie had, which was the fizzy drink, and technically you could argue that he and his grandson should have been bounced or dead in third place. He may care about his grandson, but his actions throughout the movie prove that he has a darker side and is a man of lesser morals. We'll throw in Mrs. TV next. A mom who just sits her idiot kid in front of the TV so much that the TV has become his life. And she's even proud of it.
I serve all his TV dinners right here. He's never even been to the table.
Another example of Parent of the Year. Spoiling their kid in a unique way to the point where the excess ruins them and turns them into a monster. She also went on to the tour with her son, clearly with the intent of stealing the gobstopper, which she alludes to at one point.
Just keep your eyes open and your mouth shut.
Our final parent fits with our final kid. Mr. Salt is next with the bronze medal of evil. We put him last on the list of parents because his daughter is not only the worst kid in the movie, but she's one of the worst kids we've ever seen in a movie.
Give me time!
I want it now!
He brags about how great she is and that he gets her everything that she asks for. He tries really hard to get her everything inside of the factory and shows that he's sort of just a doormat for her.
How much do you want for the golden goose?
They're not for sale.
Name the price.
He's a spineless, cowardly clown who can't even control his kid. What a loser. Speaking of which, our last of the 5 ticket holders and all-around bad egg, Veruca Salt is without a doubt the worst kid in the movie. And she gets the silver medal for evil. You could probably make the argument that the other kids have time to grow up and evolve as people, but it looks like Veruca is such a monster that there's just no fixing her. Veruca is a spoiled brat whose father gives her everything she wants. She's known for her catchphrase, "I want it now."
I want an Oompa Loompa now!
she is cruel to everyone on the tour, and unlike the other kids who are taken away, Veruca goes out with a bang, destroying the golden egg room and knocking over Oompa Loompas because she can't have a golden goose. She's a rotten egg, and her score on the garbage chute shows that.
She was a bad egg.
Hopefully she doesn't crawl back up it like that little girl from The Ring. Finally, the gold medal of evil goes to none other than Willy Wonka himself. Are you really surprised? This guy is nuts.
The suspense is terrible.
He's gonna go this time.
I hope it'll last.
Willy Wonka seems like a nice guy, just trying to find a good kid to run his factory, but if you look into things more, we can see that this is 100% not the case. Willy Wonka endangered all of the kids by letting them fall into these traps without really trying to get them to stop. In fact, it seems like these traps were set up intentionally to disqualify these kids.
Stop, don't come back.
For instance, the vehicle that takes everybody from section of the factory to section of the factory each have less seating and exactly enough room for the remaining parties. This is all clearly premeditated. Whenever something happens to a kid, whether it be nearly drowning, being sent to a furnace, turning into a blueberry, or shrinking, he reacts with total apathy.
Right. He's completely unharmed.
And I know that we're supposed to suspend disbelief with it being a family film, but there's a solid chance that those kids are dead. I don't think one recovers from turning into a blueberry or being shrunk down to the size of an action figure. This guy is a sadist. Willy Wonka also doesn't treat the Oompa Loompas very well. When they're at the chocolate factory, it doesn't take that long for Augustus to get taken to the fudge room, and there aren't any railings there.
No, I won't hold you responsible.
The Oompa Loompas work by that river every day, and it's possible that Oompa Loompas would fall into the river and get taken away, and no one would be there to save them like Augustus. His factory clearly lacks the proper safety protocols. After the tour is over, Willy Wonka snaps at Charlie about how he lost the game and that he should just leave.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
He seems to have a lack of care for any life and doesn't really care too much about how he treats his employees. While this is just a theory, it's possible that he pawned his factory onto Charlie to avoid the bankruptcy that his factory was facing, as well as all the lawsuits that would be coming his way because of the tour. It's also interesting to note that Willy Wonka just calmly says that the other kids and their parents are fine, but we don't ever see them again. So who knows if they were really fine or if he was just trying to shut up Charlie and Grandpa Joe.
I promise you they'll be quite all right.
Honestly, this dude may very well be a murderer. Hashtag cancel Wonka. But what do you think? Who is the most evil character in the crazy world of Willy Wonka? Let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters from your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.